to Ebs.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Alexandra. You've pretty much said everything that I was going to say at the beginning of this call. So just to reiterate, as she said earlier, please do feel free to drop in your questions as the presentation goes on. I'll be picking them up, and if you feel comfortable, you can either read them out later or I can read them out to our panelists. I'm Ebs. I'm a communications analyst on our ERP program at Skanska, one of the UK Oracle user groups. And I'll be introducing you over to Shailendra and Linda, who will be taking the presentation now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ebs. Shailendra and I will start with a few introductions of ourselves as well. So I'm Linda Barker. As already said, I work for Skanska UK, the ERP Product Owner for Skanska UK, and we're going through an ERP implementation at the moment of Oracle Cloud. And so some of what we're about to say is based on our experience at Skanska, but Shailendra and I have got a lot of experience of previous ERPs, so this is actually an accumulation of knowledge from several years. I've worked in ERP for about 20 years, a bit longer actually, but been working with Oracle Cloud, JD Edwards, eBusiness Suite, and other systems as well, but predominantly Oracle. So thank you all for coming, and look forward to sharing our story with you. Over to Shailendra.
Thank you, Linda. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all well, taking care of yourself. I work for Skanska, as you know. I'm the lead architect in Skanska. I'm more than 16 years of experience implementing ERP, and specifically Oracle ERP. Before Skanska, I have got experience of doing ERP implementation, especially around cloud transformation with Tesco before Skanska, and with Sainsbury's, HSBC, and a few other organizations. So yeah, thank you for joining us, and we will be taking you through with a couple of slides to set the context before we launch into the questions. The first slide that you can see on your screen, it's the journey that Skanska and in general the ERP solution has gone through, and what are the really key foundations or the key sort of guiding principles that helps us to govern the solution. So at the bottom of the screen you can see that ERP is just a piece of a puzzle, or the bigger puzzle, which needs to be aligned to the business vision and the business strategy of any enterprise. And so that is the case with Skanska. Along with that comes the IT strategy, which is again the guiding the solution through the process, which helps to govern, making sure that we're doing the right thing strategically or tactically wherever possible. We do need to also make sure that we are aligned to the best practices where possible. So we are using TOGAF framework in terms of getting the best practice for architecture. We are also looking to utilize the focused objectives at program level and also at a process level, which I'm going to cover through the rest of these blocks. So something that you see on the screen here is nothing new. So I won't say that this is very unfamiliar. So if, most of you who has gone through this implementation before, this is quite familiar in terms of how and what we do in terms of the solution journey. Design governance sits in the middle. This is the core. This is the controlling piece, is the governing piece in between. So you come from compromises of your technical design authority, your functional design authority, or your steering committee, etc. That sits in the middle. And this phase starts with requirements gathering, but it doesn't have to necessarily start with the requirements gathering. It depends upon the context of your organization. If you're implementing any cloud ERP, and as you know, the cloud ERP is quite transformative in nature, because you don't, as compared to eBusiness Suite, you can't really change a lot. So it is you have to adopt. So it really depends upon how mature your organization is in terms of your processes, in terms of whether an organization has gone through any ERP transformation before. In our case, we didn't. So I think it was quite important to to understand what are the requirements as well. And we did that through a requirements gathering phase by not just listening, but also making sure that we create measurable key results using a best practice methodology called OKRs. You might have heard this is quite a standard approach in terms of creating measurable objectives that we are utilizing. And using the OKRs and the MOSCOs, we came up with a requirements catalog as the output of this phase. It was really good, really key for us to know what we are delivering. So this goes into the scope part of the program. Now, once we have recorded what needs to be delivered, and we've got created measurable KPIs against it, then you're looking at analysis. We did that by going through a reflect phase. So reflect is where you have a team of designers, solution architects, you got process leads, they sit together, they look at what is the capability that we have bought from Oracle in terms of their cloud capability, plus the technological capability, and also looking at the existing capabilities of your organization. Like in Skanska, we already have a lot of IT tech tools and technologies that we can leverage. So that becomes your capability. Then you measure that and you basically align that against the requirements, and you come up with a fit gap. So what we have got in terms of capability, what we want to deliver, requirements, measurable, and then what is left, that becomes your fit gap log. And these are the two outputs. Then move into design. And design are mostly focused around, now, before we moved into design, we actually created, and I think this is one of the best practice approach as well, to create that boundaries of the solution. And we did that through a solution blueprinting process. We created a solution blueprint. We had our process taxonomy of our process catalog, which was adopted from Oracle's supplied material as well, because the whole idea is to adopt to Oracle's processes. So we created our process catalog based on what Oracle supplies. Plus, we added, by going by 80-20 rule, we added the 20% offline processes or the processes which sits in other system. That becomes the whole process taxonomy. We went through solution walkthroughs. So just going by this flow, this is no means this is about waterfall. So there are iterations within each one of these phases as well. And also there are iterations beyond it as well. So you're looking at delivering your 80% of the solution and then working on the rest 20% where there is a gap through the whole design gap closure process. We had application walkthroughs or solution playback, as you know, in Oracle's world. So we had a couple of them, and which helps us to refine our solution as we go through. And we had a bunch of gaps, and we started closing through design gap closure. That's number 3. And then once the solution has been baselined, and we can draw a line. I'm not saying the solution is finalized. It's a baseline solution always. So once you have baselined the solution, then you looked into implementation phase. This is where you would bring in your data migration, your migrated data from your legacy system. You perform testing and validation. Again, you refine the design. There is always a feedback loop back to the design phase, always. Where possible, we restrict ourselves not to go into requirements gathering, but we all know that's not possible. Realistically, we always go back to and check our requirements again. And then we again go back to the fit gap closure artifact to look at how well we are meeting the requirements. Once the solution has gone through the rigors of testing, the checks and balances, once it has gone through the whole design governance of exiting, it has been checked and assured and aligned against all the foundation bits, which is aligned to business strategy, IT strategy, along with the defect closures that you look at as part of your test phase exit criteria. Once it has gone through that, then you're looking at handing over to the support organization. And that's where the documentation is really key. It's really key that all the documentations that we are creating as a part of all the different phases are kept up to date, are actually aligned to the solution that you're building, which is your configuration workbooks, your your integrations, your reporting. So all the catalogs needs to be handed over to the support team. The process maps that we are using SIPOC or a Six Sigma methodology to create process maps, and any sort of backlog, any debts that we have created as a part of the whole ERP process. As you know, ERP, I'll go back to the original point I made. ERP, it is usually it is just a part of the puzzle. It is a piece in the puzzle. It is not the entire puzzle. So it is very important we guard the scope because as a part of the IT strategy, there are other solutions which can solve other problems. ERP cannot solve all the problems. So it's very important to draw up that scope, and then it gets handed over. And by no means, as it is a cloud process, it's a cloud journey. This whole phase doesn't stop here. The solution has got a lifetime of its own. The requirements change because organization evolve, they change. Cloud evolves, as you know, we got quarterly updates. So it is to bridge that gap, you have to go through the same process, not on that scale as you would go through in an implementation program, but these phases would still remain intact throughout the life cycle of the product, which is ERP in this case. With that in mind, I'll hand over to Linda, who will take us through some of the key lessons. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Shailen. Yeah, we've come up with 9 key lessons, and we could have come up with 50 lessons, to be honest, but we thought we'd pull out 9 things that have helped us in our career when it's come to ERP decision making. So I want to share those with you, not in any particular order. But the first one is get the balance right on the design authority. So we have layers of governance in ERP programs, and the design authority is a really key layer. So that's where the fundamental decisions get made. And above that, there's an ERP steering group. But the design authority is the sort of workhorse of the decision making. And to make sure that those decisions are respected by the whole organization, it's really important to get the balance right. So what I mean by that is make sure that you've got business process representatives on the design authority, as well as the technologists. So we have business process owners, we have strategists from the organization, data architects, solution architects, representative from the system integrator, and representation from our change function as well. So we try to make sure that it's balanced, that it's not too technical or too business focused, but we've got that happy medium. Next one is we really try not to overwhelm the design authority with every single decision. We set criteria for what comes to design authority and what decisions can be made locally. And at the moment in our current project, we're holding design authority meetings about once a week, sometimes twice a week, and sometimes we skip a week, but that's just the kind of frequency that we're experiencing at the moment. And we've come quite a long way through our design journey on our current project, but we're still having design authority meetings. There are still really key meetings to be had. So we don't want to be having those every day. So we've set some criteria for what comes to design authority and what can be made locally. The next one is set a really clear relationship between the decisions that are being made and the business objectives. And we did this on our current project right from the very beginning. So we started with our business objectives. We went through a requirements gathering process, and every time we looked at those requirements, we related them back to our business objectives. How is this requirement going to meet those business objectives? And as we make decisions as well, we relate those back to the requirements and to the business objectives and the key results that we expect to apply to those decisions. So it's really important to keep referring back and not forget what the business objective is that you're trying to meet. Next one, document. Sometimes there's a myth that if you're working in an agile way, that it's not necessary to document. I'm pretty certain that everyone on this call knows that is a myth, that documentation, particularly on an ERP project, is really important. And as we go through, we need those we need that knowledge that is otherwise in people's heads to be written down. We need the knowledge of some really, really key people on the program team to be transferred into the business as usual function, and that doesn't happen just through sort of mind transfer. It does need to be written down. So we write down right from the very beginning. We write down what our business objectives are. We write down our requirements. We write down how we prioritize them. We write down our processes, and we map them in SIPOCs, supplier, input, process, output, customer, really clearly, and everything is documented. And so we have hundreds of processes. Each one of them has a document attached to it. But it's really important that we have that, and we have that that is then handed over to the business at the end of the program. The next one is trying to achieve a really clear balance between delivering a program and achieving the long-term strategic aims of the organisation, because by its nature, a program has a fixed duration, it has a fixed budget, usually a fixed scope, and a fixed cost. And so there's normally an expectation or a will that decisions are made quickly to make sure that the cost, scope, and duration constraints aren't exceeded, and that can be difficult sometimes. So we have to try and strike a balance between doing what's right for the program and meeting the aims of the program, doing what's right for the business long term, and that can be a bit of a challenge. But we find ways around that, and happy to take some questions on that. The next one is have really clearly defined roles and responsibilities in the team. So there should be no confusion over who does what. There's an awful lot to do in every ERP program, and if there's any confusion, what is likely to happen is you get people trying to do the same job, and I'm not talking about the whole job, but elements of the role. Or what's worse is if nobody is doing it, and if that's not really clear from the start about who is accountable, who is responsible for every element of the program, it can be a real risk that things get missed or things don't get done correctly. First things first, get your foundations in place. So when we started on our design journey, we really started with those foundation structures. So what does our legal entity structure look like? What do our project structures look like? What does our chart of accounts look like? And I'm sorry if I'm sort of teaching people what they already know, but this is such an important one. We didn't feel that we could leave it out, that you get those foundation structures in place at the start, and that is like the skeleton that everything else hangs off. So it's really important when we're making ERP design decisions that we understand what that structure looks like. We found that it really helps when we're making decisions. We team up our business subject matter experts with a technical subject matter expert or a functional subject matter expert who understands the solution. So in our case, we're implementing Oracle Fusion. So we have subject matter experts who from Oracle Fusion world teaming up with our business. So we have an accountant working really closely with a Oracle ERP consultant, and they work hand in hand. And sometimes it's difficult to have one-for-one matching like that, but we find that it really works to have that in place at the start. And the final one that we added is make sure that your processes are lean. And you might say, well, Oracle Cloud is best practice and the processes are kind of lean out of the box, but there's an awful lot of process around the edges. When we looked at our SIPOC, our suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, and customers, the whole process in context, it's very easy to allow old processes, old ways of working to slip into the new ways of working. So we actually sent our team really early in the project, we sent them on Lean Six Sigma training. We don't apply Lean Six Sigma to the letter across everything we do, but what it did do is it got people understanding how processes work, what a lean process looks like, what that SIPOC looks like, how to even map processes. So that was a really good investment. And it also allows us to think about benefits realization, because if you look at the Lean Six Sigma training, and I'm talking about quite basic training in Lean Six Sigma yellow or green belts, you don't have to go too far into it unless you're maybe in a manufacturing world and you have that already embedded in your organization. But we found even quite basic Lean Six Sigma training allows us to think more carefully about how we define our process, how we measure it, and then we're going on to analysing it and improving it. So that's really helped us on that journey, and will help us with the benefits realisation as well. So that's all the slides that we had to share. So I don't know if we've got any questions in, but otherwise I'll hand over to Herbs anyway, who's collating questions.